Welcome back to CAMS 1103. We've got a multi-part Harry Potter question for you. Please name all the teachers who protected the Sorcerer's Stone and what their protections were. Enjoy the lecture.
So here are the three motions of the Iliad, the three movements as I see it. First, the transfer of strife, especially from the divine to the human level. Second, the death of Patroclus, which occurs in Book 16, but which stretches its importance from the very beginning to the very end of the epic. And finally, the tragedy of Hector, which has its most important moments in Book 6, when Hector goes back to Troy and has a very moving scene with Andromache, and then in Book 22, when he's killed by Achilles, and finally in Book 24, when his father Priam comes to ransom him at the tent of Achilles. Each of these movements in its own way embodies all of the themes of the Iliad, all of the themes that I was talking about before, of both glorifying heroes and questioning what heroism means. Now, the transfer of strife is what might be called the basic mechanic, and it works like this. The whole thing starts when Zeus and Poseidon are fighting over who is going to get to sleep with Thetis, and there's that prophecy that she is going to produce a son greater than his father, and so Zeus and Poseidon decide they're not going to sleep with Thetis, and instead marry her to Peleus, a mortal. It's at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis that the thing with the golden apple happens, which leads to the judgment of Paris, which leads to Helen getting kidnapped or going of her own free will with Paris, which leads to the Trojan War. So the whole basic structure of the Trojan War is that a conflict on the level of the gods got transferred down to a conflict on the level of people. But the Iliad makes that much more meaningful, because like I've been saying, the Iliad is actually about the conflict between Agamemnon and Achilles, which makes Achilles so mad that he decides to sit out of battle, causing all of that grief for the Greeks and eventually causing his best friend Patroclus' death. And the reason the transfer of strife describes that is that the conflict between Achilles and Agamemnon arises in a way that is analogous to the conflict of the Trojan War itself, and in fact analogous to the conflict between Zeus and Poseidon over Thetis. That is, it's a conflict over a girl. Just as the Trojan War starts because Paris takes away Menelaus's wonderful wife Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, so the conflict between Agamemnon and Achilles starts because Agamemnon takes away Achilles' prize, who happens to be a girl. The strife has now transferred all the way down the line to a conflict between Agamemnon and Achilles, the general and the best warrior of the Achaean forces. And so what began as a conflict on the divine level has now become something that leads to endless pains, as the first lines of the Iliad tell us, for the Achaeans in Troy. One of those pains is the next of the motions, the next of the movements, the death of Patroclus. And this is the thing that makes Achilles return to battle. But that death itself, the moment of that death in Book 16 of the Iliad, has its own extraordinary importance, because at that moment Patroclus sees through double determination. You remember double determination that I talked about way back in the first book of the Odyssey, where the gods are there not to cause the humans to do things, but rather to reflect what's going on the human level in a grand and epic way. Well, you may remember that one of the things I said about double determination is it's almost consistent enough to be called a law, such that we really should think of it as a law, but that it's not completely consistent. The moment of Patroclus' death is one of the most important moments where the bards of the Iliad actually decide that they're going to talk about what it means to have this divine level where gods are causing things and this human level where humans are causing things. Here's what Patroclus says when Hector taunts him for having gone down under Hector's spear. This is at line 844 of Book 16 of the Iliad. Now is your time for big words, Hector. Yours is the victory given by Cronos' son Zeus and Apollo, who have subdued me easily, since they themselves stripped the arms from my shoulders. Even though 20 such as you had come in against me, they would all have been broken beneath my spear and have perished. No, deadly destiny with the son of Leto has killed me, and of men it was Euphorbus. You are only my third slayer. And put away in your heart this other thing that I tell you. You yourself are not one who shall live long, but now already death and powerful destiny are standing beside you, to go down under the hands of Aeacus' great son, Achilles. Now, Euphorbus is someone that I just like to refer to as random Trojan dude, because that's really all there is to him. He's not anybody special, and so when Patroclus says to Hector, it wasn't you, it was Euphorbus, what he's saying is, you don't get the glory from this, because another guy was the guy who really took care of me. But there's something that's even more important here. He doesn't make Hector his second killer after Euphorbus. He makes Hector his third killer after Apollo and Euphorbus. And what that means is that Patroclus is seeing through double determination. He sees that the gods are doing bad stuff to the humans in this story. And that provides to the audience of the Iliad a kind of meditation on what war means that's really fascinating. War is people on the bottom level, the foot soldiers, and even though Patroclus is a glorious warrior, here he's kind of playing the part of a foot soldier, having to carry out the commands of people above them who want to have these conflicts that really are not explainable. That is, the Trojan War is about a woman, as Aeschylus calls her, a strange woman. And here's Patroclus paying the price at the hands of the gods. And what Patroclus is saying to Hector is, you don't see it, but you are going to pay exactly this same price. And that's what the transfer of strife is doing into this motion of the death of Patroclus in Book 16.